Good morning, everyone. We're continuing my series that I've called Diversity Chat. We're going to talk to Aaron Thorpe, creator of SuperGay Spirits, about his vodka that's out. Tomorrow, same time, 10 o'clock, we're going to talk to Leo Robacek, who is a mixologist. He was at the Nomad. He's in London now. And then on Friday, we're going to Fronton in southwest France to talk with the owner of Chateau Clémence. Clémence, not Clémence in Sauternes, but Clémence in Fronton. Hi, Gabriella. Aaron is going to be joining us momentarily. There he is. And let's see. I think he's going to be here in a second. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Jeff.
You know, as I was doing this and we were talking just a minute ago to touch base, I don't think we've ever actually sat and chatted and had a drink and like kind of talked very much. We always pass each other at various things, right?
It's always very polite and casual, but yeah, it's like, yes, you are correct.
So it's
We're
nice
both very
to
busy.
Well, yeah, but it's nice to, that's one thing I've learned from this series. It's nice to get it was Roman Roth actually at Wolfer that he was like, Jeff, how often do I get to sit and chat with a New York City wine director for a half hour? And it's very true. Even if you're sitting with like six other people at the table, there's six, that hour is divided into six. Anyways, it's nice to have you for a full half hour.
It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So could we start by introducing yourself and tell us how you got where you are?
Sure. So my name is Aaron Thorpe. As you know, I've been in the restaurant business for a little while in New York City, running wine programs. I started actually, I don't know, probably 16, 17 years ago, but was the wine director of Raoul's in Soho.
All right.
Moved on from there. Then ran the wine program at the Standard Hotel at the West Village, or at the Highline, and then left and opened La Cuckoo as the beverage director there. And then presently I'm the beverage director for a restaurant group called Happy Cooking, which are a collection of jewel box restaurants in the West Village. So,
A collection of what?
kind of small jewel box restaurants in the West Village.
Ah, okay. Sorry, I just had a little accident here. And so let's see. I want to ask, what did you do during the Corona? And I know you launched SuperGay kind of right at that time. So I'd like to kind of hear a little bit about the start of the business and how you pivoted during Corona, and then we'll talk more about SuperGay.
So the start of the business was just when I left Le Cuckoo, I was recovering. I had to have back surgery, so I was recovering from that. And also there was a lot of political kind of turmoil that was happening. Just felt very kind of disenfranchised and politically, and there seemed to be there was this kind of question about how can we make change, both kind of like ideologically and this subscription to capitalist culture. But I was kind of playing with thinking. I had a lot of time to think as I was recovering, but was kind of wondering these ideas about how can we change as restaurant professionals and as beverage professionals specifically. What can we do to make a change in this? Like, how can we fix this? It felt like very debilitating and almost paralyzing, and then started thinking about this idea of like purchasing power. We have purchasing power, and we know that through distributors. But how can we do that as consumers? And what kind of brands could we make a choice with, and actually make change? And is that even viable? Could we do that?
Right.
And then started thinking more about it, and came up with this idea of SuperGay that was born out of the idea of you buy a bottle of this and we give back to the community out of which was born in. That's something that was very powerful to me. I kept thinking about it, and it was just an idea for a little while, and then I started talking to more people about it, and they got excited, and it seemed like it could be viable. And then a couple years later, actually the week before the pandemic, we launched officially. So we had to pivot in a different way. We weren't even launched yet. We didn't know it was happening. We launched the week before New York City shut down. Had kind of heard things were happening, but didn't realize the kind of gravity of the situation necessarily, or how serious it would be. And it was a big pivot, for us.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, having on-premise relationships with bars and restaurants, that was the immediate kind of like, oh great, we'll support you. Without even tasting it,
Right.
for some friends, just to be able to get it out there, not having, it's a very overt name. It's a queer brand, and it is you don't know. You can talk to your friends who, are in your kind of like circle of people that you love and trust, but it can be very insular in that sense, and you don't have a wider kind of audience for this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one measure by which you could, use this, but there's a greater audience that we're trying to reach as well. And so you don't know that until it's out there. But so it's kind of started just wanting to get it out there, talking to a few friends. We're like, yeah, we'll totally carry it, whatever, great. Well, bars and restaurants shut down. We launched this and nothing was open the next week. Right. And the only thing that was open were retail stores. And that wasn't our, I've owned a wine store in the city, but they're not the connections that I necessarily maintain as
exactly right.
In restaurants.
It's a very bifurcated world. The buyers in restaurants and the buyers in stores kind of don't ever mix. It's a strange thing.
I think it's getting better now. I mean but you're right. Historically it was like you had SOMs and and buyers, and it was like, or SOMs and retail stores. But so then it was like, well, we have to sell this at some point. So I'll say the biggest pivot was that for me was making the change for bars and restaurants and focusing on retail stores. And I have to say, the retail stores that supported us at the beginning will always be forever dear to my heart, because they literally championed this product and have been just our biggest supporters.
So how did you find them? Did you just literally cold call or start with the places close to home?
We had a list of, I don't know, probably 3,000 stores in the city and just around New York City, and spent 8 hours a day emailing people, because I was terrified I didn't leave my apartment for weeks. It was like we didn't know what was going on. So just
right.
email people, and 8 hours of emailing, nobody responded. For days and days and days, nobody responded. Right. Everyone's busy, and I understand that everyone's busy. This is not what people are looking for. Nobody's bringing on new product. They're in survival mode. And there's one retail store in Brooklyn that responded, called Myrtle Wines, and they were like, yeah, we'll check it out. And then Henry's out in Brooklyn, in Bushwick, responded. And I just was like, amazing. Like, they're like, how do we get a bottle? We'd love to taste it, but how do we get a bottle? And I was terrified of the subways. Right. Nobody was taking Ubers. I was like, okay, great. I'm going to walk it to you. So I just started walking.
This is like in April, right?
This is in March. Well, this is like the third or fourth week of March.
Wow.
So I just started walking over the city and dropping bottles off. And I would walk to Bushwick, walk back. I didn't have anything else to do, so it didn't really matter. But I also think that gesture of just how important that was. They're like, how did you get here? And I was like, I walked. And they're like, where'd you come from? I was like, I live in the East Village. And they're like, I don't even care I don't even care. Just send us bottles. You didn't have to do that. So there's this kind of camaraderie in our business that it's super special. So anyway, that was a very circuitous way for me to say that, that was our biggest pivot from the planned kind of restaurant and bars to more retail. So.
Well, but there's part of it. I think anybody who's in the spirits or wine business, you kind of have this dream of being a winemaker or making some gin somewhere. And so when you see it's like one of our own, whether it's, if you're a retail person, maybe they didn't know what a superstar you were and cold call, but to see that it's your product, it's much easier to take a chance and get behind than if, Grey Goose has a new lemon flavor or something. It's that small business, everybody kind of sticks together, and then it's local too. So tell us, what is SuperGay, and how did it start, and where's it going?
So it started with this idea of conscious, kind of like more purchasing power, conscious consumerism. How do we get back? How can we affect change?
But when you say that, Aaron, do you mean that there's a book called Eat, Drink, Vote. I think it's one of the Baskin Robbins heirs, and she's saying every time you make a purchase of toilet paper or oatmeal, you are voting towards a type of production and a type of a company that runs a good company, whatever. Is that what you're talking about?
To a certain extent, yeah. I mean, I think that not to talk politics, but this is very bipartisan in a way of saying that, I think most people would feel like their voting the political system is kind of relatively disenfranchised, and the only other way, or I feel disenfranchised from the political system, that there's the two, not to get political, the only real way that I can make a vote right now is how I spend my money.
Right.
actively.
Mm-hmm.
And people, it is the biggest way to get a response from people is what you do with your dollars. And rather than like filling out a ballot or something like that, don't get me wrong, I think it's important, but I believe that purchasing power is one of the most important things that we hold.
Great.
And if I have the choice to purchase something that I know is responsibly made, that it tastes great, most importantly tastes great, is responsibly made, and then as a bonus to all of this, gives back to things that I care about, or the people, or people that care about those things. For me, that's like, great, no brainer, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And if it's in the relative price point. To me, that just is like, it's a no-brainer for me. So that's what I was talking about, a feeling both kind of political turmoil happening, creating this brand, and then having the ability to kind of like have something that actually would give back to people,
right,
in a meaningful way.
And not to get off the subject too much, because I do want to hear about the story and the plan and actually how you make the vodka. But I feel like it's such a big issue that many people don't even know that they can vote with their dollars, and they also are so busy just taking care of their kids that they just order the quickest thing or the simplest thing. And I think one of the hardest messages out there is to say you can vote with your dollars, but also try and spend a little time to be responsible with those dollars. It's hard though.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we live in a world that's fast-paced, that is go, 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 particularly in this city. And the amount of research that it takes to like have that happen on I pull out my card, I don't know how many times a day to like a debit card. Even at times it would say the amount of time that it would take for me to kind of research every one of those transactions is probably not efficient. But if they are major transactions, then I can pinpoint myself with, if I know that like SuperGay or Future Gin or whatever those brands are, when I'm at a bar and I see them and that like, great, oh, I you know, they might not be everywhere, but when I see them, that's like a signal for me to be able to be like, great, I really want to support that. I love what they're doing. Tastes great, you know, anyway.
So let's see, somebody was asking. So how did you start, how did you start SuperGay? What did you do? How did you find partners? How did you find a distiller? All those things.
I leaned on the people that that are our friends. I talked to people in the industry. I talked to distributors. I spoke with Yoni from Neversink, who I'm a huge fan of. And actually, Yoni, for people that don't know, Neversink is a gin that works out of Port Chester, about an hour north of here. And Yoni had just become a friend over the years, and I told him about the project. He loved the idea. I had asked him if he wanted to help do some contract distilling. But, you know, Neversink is an amazing gin, but it also, their production schedule at the time, at least, was very tight. So he couldn't do it. But he connected me with with Nahimas. It's a husband and wife, Dorit and David, who do make this for us. And it's about 10 minutes from them. But so he connected me with them, and they were willing to do it on our schedule. And they are a literal mom and pop facility, and they were lovely. They are lovely and are such a dream to work with, and have just been really gracious and a real blessing for us as well. And it felt also very fit into the ethos of what we were trying to do in terms of a brand. Like, we want it to be a craft product. We make every single batch by hand. My business partner, which I'll talk about in a second, and I were up there labeling the bottles the first time and adding corks and doing all the stuff. So, but to answer your question, the idea was born after, you know, kind of like this stint in the restaurant business. I know restaurants, but I don't know really, I mean, I know restaurants and bars and things like that, but I'm not a marketing guy. I'm not an advertising guy. And when I mentioned the wine store that I had before, when I had the wine store, I used to have a now dear friend and my business partner lived across the street and used to come into the wine shop all the time. And he was in advertising and PR or advertising and marketing. His name is Tom Jackson. And he came in and I kind of pitched the idea to him, like, hey, Tom, what do you think? And Tom was is important, challenging on the idea. Like, why do we need this product? And we eventually kind of worked through some of the initial kind of conversations, and he loved it. And we're a business partner. So he has a advertising background, and I have a beverage background, and together it seemed like just a really good fit.
So how did you choose vodka, and why did you choose corn?
We chose vodka for a couple reasons. For me, I think it's the easiest access point, both financially and for people to understand. I think from a brand that already is might be challenging for some people, the name is SuperGay, which is not necessarily a commentary on like sexuality, but more about like being fabulous and exhibiting joy in a market that might be, that I kind of feel like in the craft spirits market that might be devoid of joy. It's meant to be
100%.
a party, you know, it's meant to throw a party. And vodka was just like the easiest, I think vodka was the easiest thing to kind of access with all of the other kind of things that were surrounding this project.
Okay.
It's also the easiest thing for us to make. You know, I'm not a distiller. I've spent a lot of time tasting distillates, but I don't know all the ins and outs of doing it. But for us, it was just like the easiest kind of thing to figure out right at the beginning. So.
Well, and also it's because usually when people, you see a lot of craft gin makers, and I think in the similarity is that you don't have to age those. You can make it and then sell it. Whereas if it's a bourbon or something, you have to age it, and so that's where the expense and everything comes in. But so okay, so that makes sense. How did you choose corn?
So with that being said, with vodka, the question then becomes, how do you market, or how do you kind of differentiate yourself with a craft spirit? Because we want to be quality. We are quality. Yeah. But how do you differentiate yourself with a spirit that's inherently, or historically at least, supposed to be odorless and flavorless, tasteless?
Right.
Like that doesn't do a lot.
Right.
Like you don't have a lot of options to work with at that point. And for us, the only thing that was left was about texture. And so for us, the biggest thing that I talked to a number of other kind of like distillers and trying to figure out like what substrates we could distill to make the most textured vodka, and corn was inevitably the answer that we got all the time.
Okay.
So the combination of corn along with how we filter the vodka is, in my opinion, creates a really, really beautifully textured vodka. And that's something that for us is important for two reasons. One of which is because you can drink it on the rocks by itself. You can just have it and it's gorgeous and it doesn't taste like gasoline or rubbing alcohol. And it also plays really well in cocktails. Like that's one of the things that we oftentimes forget. You know this, running beverage programs and creating, I'm sure, cocktails. That texture is like one of the key ingredients that we oftentimes kind of miss in terms of like aromatics are great, acids great, from, you know, like tannins are great in wine, but like that's also a textural piece. But in cocktails, like texture is one of the more important things, like to get mouthfeel. So corn is the reason why we did that. But
so I've obviously tasted it, and I'm not a big vodka drinker. I have to pace myself, but we're selling a lot at work. Everybody's very, very happy with it, and there's definitely that texture there. It's delicious, and I really love it, and I tell as many people as I can about it. But can you explain how that texture might be different? Because it's so good, you kind of want to just have it on the rocks and enjoy it. But when you put it in a cocktail, how is it different in a martini than maybe another vodka, and how is it different in a cocktail? And maybe, like, I always feel like pineapple has like a creaminess to it that may be good or bad with it, and citrus might be good or bad with that texture. Can you just talk about a few cocktails and how it works in different cocktails?
Yes, I can. To clarify the question just a second, you're actually asking how texture works in cocktails, or?
Yeah, how it's, well, and Becky Sue Epstein, who's a spirits writer, is asking if you could explain that or describe the texture, that'd be great. But just then how that texture works in a martini versus a vodka tonic or a something with pineapple juice or grapefruit juice.
Perfect. Understood. Okay. I mean, I think I think what we're talking about, it depends on the end use. If it's a vodka soda, you're probably not thinking too much about texture. I don't consider a vodka soda necessarily a cocktail. I considered it a vehicle to kind of like get the vodka in as least one, with the least caloric intake, and two, as kind of like least interesting as possible. And if I do drink vodka, take this from somebody that when I drink vodka, I usually drink a vodka soda or martini. So it depends. If I'm out, I'm not going to drink a martini in the middle of summer on the beach probably, but I'm going to kind of throw down a vodka soda. For me, the texture piece is really when we're talking about the integration into cocktails, particularly martinis. Martini is really three things. It's whatever spirit you're using, either gin or vodka, vermouth, if you choose to, and water. And that's it. You have two things that we're talking of. The texture of the vermouth, you have water, which is relatively textureless, or maybe zero texture, depending. And then you have one thing that you can play with, which is the texture of the vodka. And if that vodka is textured, all of these things are getting diluted. So, and I think when you taste us, when you taste SuperGay, it is in here. You're like, wow, this actually has mouthfeel. It has like maybe even some aromatics of it. But those things are intended to be that way out of the bottle, because when you dilute them with water, it really plays well within the cocktail. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, particularly a martini. But then, does it work differently? Because I find that like pineapple, this is just juices because I'm not a big mixologist, but like pineapple has kind of a creamy texture that I think might not be as good with the vodka, but lime and lemon would be better because it kind of counters that creaminess. Does that make sense?
You're saying the pineapple and this vodka would be a little bit too overbearing?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about balance. Cocktails are, that's all we're doing. It's all about balance. If this, I mean, I have not had our vodka with fresh pineapple juice. I kind of do it just delicious. But I also, to answer your question, like I often find when I'm integrating pineapple into a cocktail, I need to cut it with some other sort of kind of brighter acid because it gets either too sweet. So if I'm adding pineapple, I'll usually add like a quarter lemon or quarter lime, depending on what the cocktail is. So just depending.
There's a lot of old things coming back. The espresso martini, the Cosmo, they're all coming back, and it's a little disorienting for me.
How are you feeling about it? Are you hanging in there?
What?
I said, how are you? Yes, I agree that the Cosmopolitan, which I actually love, a good Cosmo. I don't know if there is a better cocktail than a good Cosmo. Yeah. The espresso martini, can't keep them in stock on the weekends. So
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your filtering process, and also can you explain, because Bridget Fertile explained the whole heads, hearts, and tails to me, and when I tasted your vodka, I was like, oh, this distiller knows what they're doing, because that's the artisanship, right?
Yeah, again, that's more of a conversation for our distiller, but the heads and the hearts, I mean, distillation is the kind of like creating a mash, distilling it, condensing that kind of distillate, cutting it at certain parts where you're taking the heart and you're leaving the heads and tails. Right. Maybe doing something with the heads and tails later on, but taking the real heart and the degree to which you define the head and the tail and the heart is the quality really of what we're talking about. Best quality products come from that real center of the distillation process from start to beginning. The start being the head, the finish being the tail being the finish.
Right. And
as you, from a temporal kind of, or from time argument, the longer you, Aaron, use your words. The heart, I don't know how to say this. The more you focus on the center of that distillate, the better quality product you have.
Right. And then was filtering unusual what you do?
It's not. Filtering has always happened. I mean, the degree, what you can change in the filtering process are really two things: the type of filter and the number of times in which you're doing so. So the type of filter that we use, I think, is relatively specific. We use a activated charcoal made from coconut husks, which is one of it's one of the purest kind of forms of filtering. Mm-hmm. We do it more than once. We do it a few times. So, and I also think that anytime you're filtering things, this from wine, you're actually pulling things out of you're pulling particulates out of the wine, but you're also pulling some. It also, in my opinion, when we taste it from filter 1 to filter 3 or 4, it also becomes a little bit more textured after the more that you filter it as well. So that process, I also, if you taste this vodka or if you haven't tasted it, leaves it with, I'm not sure if it is a function of this filter, but I believe it might be a slightly kind of aromatic piece to it that is, I think, really compelling. So,
where's your corn from? And what was my other question? Gosh, I blanked. Where do you get your? Oh, I know, gluten free. Can you speak of just where your corn is from, and then explain gluten free?
Yeah, the corn is from both Missouri and New York. We've had a lot of questions. Cool. We've had a lot of questions about this because in New York specifically, there's I'm going to forget what it's called, but I think it's called the farmstead license, which allows people that have this license to be able to purchase spirits, but it has to be at least 75% New York made. For us, it was like we chose Missouri and New York just because it was less expensive for us to do that. Where Tom and I started this ourselves, and so it's a small project. So the intention is to fully have a New York product, but we're just not there yet.
Okay.
So that was the reason for that. And gluten free. Yes, I can explain gluten free. Gluten free, as we know. We're laughing about this because we know it's a joke for us, right? Because it's not a joke, but but gluten-free as we know it is like anything that is probably not made that, you know, that has gluten in it, or made from something that doesn't have gluten in it. And so a lot of people, there's still this misnomer that spirits, it doesn't matter what the spirit is, if it's Grey Goose made from winter wheat, or if it's, you know, rye, whatever, is if it's made from that substrate, it has gluten in it. And to be clear, there is, once the distillation process does not translate gluten. So if something is distilled, it is naturally, it is gluten-free.
Right.
So if you're making a vodka from wheat, it is gluten-free.
Right.
That is, if you look at the label, that's kind of like the pun, that cheekiness that we're trying to do is it says naturally gluten-free. It's naturally gluten-free because it's a distillate, not because it's made from corn.
Right.
That was, we wanted to mention that it is gluten-free on it, but it also was like a kind of like wink, wink. So,
but I think that's one of the reasons that Tito's is so successful, that they are able to, and there's something with the FDA that as long as it's not wheat as the source, you can say gluten-free or something like that on the label. But I feel that that's one of the reasons that Tito's got so popular so fast. Do you
I think you're right. I also think that legislatively now you can put it on the label even though it's not. I might be wrong on this, but I think
it's changed. Okay.
I think so, yeah.
But I find that interesting.
Great.
Let's see. I have other questions. How are people reacting to it? Because I posted on my Instagram and you saw it, a funny, like I just have the button on the micros is just SuperGay, and so the way our system works, if you get a martini using SuperGay vodka, it comes up SuperGay martini. And sometimes the waiters don't have time to explain, and they just want a different vodka and whatever. They put it through and they see the check, and there's a funny conversation to be had, like, are you making a comment about us or whatever? But and then some people just like always want it. They like, somebody calls it the Pride vodka because we explained that the money goes back to the community. How are people reacting to it? Is it good in stores? Is it selling good in stores? Is it selling well? I can't speak. In restaurants and stuff.
Yes, the answer is yes. That was one of the biggest concerns not concerns, but like just questions whether or not when we launched it, what was going to be the response to it. I will say that the response has been kind of overwhelmingly positive. People see the branding of it and almost don't even think about the name in a way, and that was the intention, to kind of create a brand that just opened up a conversation and kind of just was overt about, like, and unapologetic about what we're doing, and wanted to just get this product out there and have it be a conversation piece for a lot of different people. I think one of the more interesting things is we have distribution. We received distribution in the last kind of few months, and everybody's been so earnest and kind of wanting to sell this and be very diligent about doing so, but maybe not sure how to kind of approach it, or, you know, I want to make sure that we're honoring it. I want to make sure that we're doing it the right way, and particularly now after this whole last year and all of the kind of political and you know, just political correctness and just wanting to and sensitivity that the world has, or that the United States has, for surrounding all kinds of issues. Just there's this kind of like rawness that people have about wanting to make sure that we're doing this the right way. And so a lot of it has just been from a distribution perspective, being like, hey, we love the vodka's great. I think the vodka's excellent. What is the best way for us to do this? And it's like, we just talk about the vodka, you know, like, it's a great product. It's a fun brand. It's a great product. This is a brand that literally, the intention of it is to bring literal joy to the craft spirits market.
Right.
But yes, it has been received well. I think to your question though, I do think that there's power in being able to say, like, once you know the brand and are familiar with it, and hopefully if you like it, to be able to walk into the bar and be like, hey, can I order a SuperGay martini? And just, I'm like, yeah, no problem, whatever. You know, like, changing people's lexicon. It's like saying like a Tanqueray and tonic, or like whatever. The ability to change people's lexicon is powerful, and it normalizes this whole kind of conversation. And I think there's also a piece of, like, I'm hoping, I've seen glimpses of this, and I'm hoping this is the case, that seeing glimpses of these people that are like, how do we honor this? We'll help you do it. Like, call me and I'll make the introduction to you. Right. Having this moment where you have people of two different upbringings, two different communities coming together, and then having this moment where they're like, I would have never come into this bar before, but I'm so glad I did. Like, I'm going to come here and sit at your bar. I would have never done that in 1,000 years, but now I'm going to do that because you guys are cool product, and this has given me almost license to do so. So
that's pretty great. It's I think there's some straight Wall Street bro it's gonna be a while before he sidles up the bar and orders a SuperGay vodka. But for every one of those, you have 20 people who are out there spreading the love. The product's fabulous in just presentation and in quality. I think you've got a darling on your hands. How did you come up with Farm to Disco? I think it's hysterical and brilliant.
I don't know. It was a random thing, and I said to Tom, I was like, we were trying to come up with kind of like taglines or something, and I don't remember. I don't remember how we did it. And I looked at him. I was like, what about, because we wanted to be, this farm to table, whatever whole thing. We were like, it's a craft product, but we want it to be a party. And we were just like, Farm to Disco. Like, let's do that. Let's roll with that.
It is. It's brilliant. And Daniel Rose, exactly. Make it super gay. I'm gonna let you go. I didn't get to all my questions, but I don't want to keep you more than a half hour. So if y'all are interested in the product, you can DM Aaron, I am assuming at your personal account or at SuperGay, to find out where it is sold. Your Instagram is amazing at supporting people who do sell your stuff, so you can also just look at your Instagram to see where it's sold. And it's distributed here by Skurnik, right?
Here in California and Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut. Yeah.
Oh, all that. Wow, fantastic. Okay, well, I told you I'd ask if I missed anything or anything you want to say as a closing remark. My own curiosity has been guiding this as much as any lack of professionalism. So, anything I missed?
I was just going to say, one, I appreciate you having me on. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. But two, people have been really responsive to it and supported us. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. Honestly, it's been a real joy to do this. It is a craft spirit that is hopefully the life of the party, and just want to bring more joy to the world. So that's it.
Sorry about the siren. Yeah, I think adding fun to the craft spirit thing is very, very cool. So good luck, and I know I'll continue to see you around and continue to support you. And thank you so much for coming on here.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right, take care, man.
Bye.
Bye-bye.